Welcome to East Street Arts' Sounds of New Briggate, a podcast series hosted by local people with local stories that celebrate a unique and vibrant high street in the heart of Leeds, New Briggate. With each episode, we spotlight a different aspect of life on New Briggate and its fascinating history. In this episode, we're joined by Suzy Mason to explore the street's nightlife in New Briggate After Dark. Due to the social and historical content being discussed in this episode, there are references made to drug taking, sex, alcohol consumption, and bathhouses or saunas.
Hello, I'm Suzy Mason and I've been involved with a variety of club and nightlife culture in the city and beyond for many years. I co-founded the Kit Kat Club with Paul Fryer, a small art club with cabaret acts and cigarette girls, at Arcadia, a side room at the gallery on Merrion Street on a Tuesday night in February 1992. After its success, we then went on to create Vague, the first purpose-built mixed-safe space to exist in Leeds. And later, I co-founded SpeedQueen, a social enterprise which ran every week for many years. When I was asked to host this episode, I felt such a strong connection to this project as I started my first club there, and all the places that have meant so much to me and have been a big part of my life have now gone. My grandfather and father were both born in the streets leading off from New Briggate towards North Street. The houses are no longer there, having been cleared decades ago for new, more modern housing. And even the row of bus stops on New Briggate were very recently relocated to Vicar Lane after being there all my life, and where I regularly stood waiting for the number 2 or 3 from about 12 years old when I first started going to town alone or with my friends. I've been talking to a variety of people who also have a connection with the street from the 1970s, 80s and 90s, hearing about their experiences as musicians, DJs, fashion designers, club promoters and business owners, and who all had a part in the melting pot of cultural nightlife on New Briggate and its surrounding areas. Hopefully this podcast can offer a tiny snapshot of some of the nightlife stories that will transport us back over 50 years of dancing, drinking, taxis, takeaways, and a few celebrity customers along the way. The first set of interviews we're going to hear from are conversations I had with Jez Willis and Lucy Fishwick, who along with their housemates set up the Mile High Club in the 1980s as a cooperative at what was then the gallery on Merrion Street just off New Briggate. Jez went on to form one half of the Utah Saints, a hugely successful electronic duo, writing and producing top 10 singles, #1 dance tracks, curating festival stages and writing music for film and games. Lucy worked alongside Jez for 10 years, promoting, DJing and designing flyers for the Mile High Club, and went on to become a community development worker, supporting women experiencing domestic abuse, and now works supporting people in the community with mental health and well-being in Leeds. They both cite their time working in nightclubs when they were younger as really important to their career development.
The first night wasn't on Merrion Street. To begin with, we started in this place called the Ballyhigh, which was in Merrion Centre, and we all had some records and we all took them down there and we all played some.
What work did you do to set up the Mile High Club? Because it sounds like you were promoting, DJing, designing the flyers.
Yeah, all those things. They didn't really have names like that. I mean, even DJing wasn't really DJing then. We took records and we played records to the point where, like, years later, you know, like the what's the word? Not chaos, but the kind of, chaos of it was, you know, somebody said to me, I thought you were so cool on one of those early nights when you played that. Iggy and the Stooges, you played that track Dirt, and I'd never heard anything like that in a disco. And I'd actually played that because I was looking for I Want to Be Your Dog, and I got the wrong thing because my eyes are bad in the dark, you know. But I got a good reputation from playing the wrong record, at least with one person. So it was just a bit like that. it was fun really, and Sophie used to do it with us as well. She always looked beautiful or dressed as a nun or did stuff like that caught the eye. And I was choosing the records and she was putting them on to begin with. So what were we doing as the job? I don't know. Yeah, I'd make little flyers, like just cut and stick kind of thing, like you would have done at nursery school, really.
Yeah, like everything. Yeah, we were still cutting things out and pasting them on and
using lecture set
things.
and biro and just photocopying, exactly, all that, really cheap and low tech. But I think I liked that because I like the stuff that was coming out on the other side of things was, like people were using computers to make graphics for things like the face, and I always thought it was cold. I don't like craft work. I didn't like the Face magazine. I didn't like things with neat and tidy edges on. So I always felt more at home with scribble. So I was the scribbly influence, I suppose. Jez had done hospital radio before, hadn't he? So he knew about how to play records out and about, and Keith was just like a ball of energy. So he just kind of... He was like the mitochondria for stuff, for good or ill.
And how did you promote the night?
Just by we made different flyers every week, near enough, I think, and thinking about them, like flyers you see now, and they'll actually tell you what bands they're going to play on the night. You think, how do you know what bands you're going to play on the night? Amazing. How very finite, So
back then it was much more about just where it actually was, and giving people a location and like a sense of identity from the imagery.
Because DJs, as far as I knew, because I wasn't in the field kind of thing, but I didn't know of DJs as DJs then, because they didn't appear to most people. Exactly. I think you just went out to a disco or to a something or other, to a nightclub, didn't you, as far as I remember?
Before the superstar DJ.
Before the superstar, people didn't have names for playing records. They were functional, they were just there playing the records. The records spoke for themselves, didn't they? And especially, because when they're not digital, they don't really mix very well. So you did get the beginning, the middle and the end. And the beginnings and the ends of records are amazing sometimes, aren't they? You don't really want to mess about with them unless you're a superstar DJ, in which case that's your life's work. But a very, very different climate really for people playing records.
Do you remember like kind of what Leeds was like then, what it was like on New Briggate?
Cold and hilly as far as I knew, because I came from the south, which was flat and warm. But on I suppose on New Briggate, for me, that was it was kind of, there's a magical edge to it because I was staying up after my bedtime. It's that thing, isn't it, when you're young and you first discover how to stay up late and hang about with security guys in Crombies and, talk nonsense in the wee small hours and watch the police activity in and out of the chip shops. Not that the police were going. Not the police were going for chips all the time. No, but I just remember like a big, like a Black Maria being parked on Merrion Street one time, and us all watching it from a distance as it swayed, bang over to one side, bang over to the other. It was just one guy inside. Goodness knows what he'd taken, but he was big and strong and just throwing himself on the inside of each wall of the van, and it was just rocking from wheel to wheel. Very exciting and utterly safe because we were all outside the van and well away,
With the security by your side.
Yeah. So it felt really lucky to be part of that, I suppose, and hear stories that I wouldn't usually have been party to, and mix with people. I do like the beginnings and the end, of those nights. I like the beginnings, playing records and trying to make the room feel like it had an atmosphere of its own. When you see all the bar staff are sort of nodding and jogging to things, and you feel like you're warming up the space before it starts. And then at the end of it, where everyone's like sweaty and exhausted and exhilarated, and they're the best bits really, I think.
My name is Jez Willis. I'm a half of an electronic Leeds-based music act called Utah Saints, who started in 1991. But I've got a long history with Leeds as a club promoter as well. I started promoting clubs in 1986, I think, or 87. So I've got a lot of links with A, this area, and B, the kind of music and nightlife scene of Leeds. We started promoting round about mid to late 80s, 86, 87 I think, and I've always been in bands and always needed what's called a portfolio career, so you always have to pull in different things, and the closest thing I could get to being in a band was promoting and DJing, before DJing was a thing really. And so it just so happened that when I was at school, I'd started, which was in Carlisle, not linked geographically, but I'd started just to get some money in to buy guitars. I'd started doing weddings with a mobile disco setup, as it was called then. And to get going, I'd gone around a lot of the pubs and bought the jukebox singles that we were chucking out, and that was my record collection. So I'd built up lots of disco records. So an obvious place to start was with disco, and I met it was actually my housemate. We just started this conversation, and Lucy Fishwick, who was in there, she said, "Oh, I've got loads of funk records," and we kind of divided up. Different people did different things. There were 6 of us in the house. I think one person didn't actually do anything, but anyway, we split everything 6 ways, and we started this night called the Mile High Club, and it was called the Mile High Club. Again, not specifically to link to this area. It's called the Mile High Club because it was in the Bally High, which was a function room above Ritzy's in the Merrion Centre. And we started doing the Friday night, and Nightmares and Wax started doing the Saturday night. And then we'd been there for about a year, and we got approached by the manager of a restaurant called the Coconut Grove, which was on Merrion Street, just around the corner from Mr. Craig's. And the manager at Coconut Grove said, "Look, we've got this function room above the restaurant that we don't use really, and we've also got this nightclub in the basement called Ricky's, but we're quite happy with Ricky's because at the moment it has about 20 people coming in, and that's enough for it to pay for the DJ and everything. So if you want, you can try your night in our kind of function room." So we thought, right, well, let's try it because it's got a bit more of a DIY pop-up attitude. It's an independent business, which we were always about, trying to support independent businesses, and because it's a blank canvas, it's a bit of an unusual venue. So the trick with the Mile High Club was to promote it to students without hopefully anybody realising it was a predominantly student night. And that's why we wanted somewhere a bit off the beaten track.
And why did you want to do that?
Because students were a market that I'd come in as a student, and we kind of and we were a house of students, so we kind of understood that market. So we understood how to get into that market and where to put our flyers, and how Lucy again was brilliant at flyering. She'd just stand there and she'd shout out whatever came into her head that was free. So she'd just say free air or something like that. She said other things which I can't probably repeat in the podcast, but she always used to say free this, and people would say what, and then they'd come up and take a flyer, and it wasn't free, it was just a flyer for the club, but she was really good at it. So that's why we kind of targeted, but we didn't want it to feel like a student night. We just made it cheap for students to come in, and then marketed it more or less just at students initially.
I'd hand them flyers, say, whatever it was. I'm really reticent to say some of the things that we were offering. It sounds terrible, but it was just like nonsense.
Oh, I think you should tell us.
Well, we'd walk around like saying, free money, end to all your problems, promising the world and eternity to people, and then handing them a flyer for a disco. But it was more from a point of, like the sense of the ridiculous, really. Yeah, we made posters. Oh my God, we used to make posters, and then we would go out. I remember fly posting, but we didn't have a brush. So we had wallpaper paste and the palm of my hand, so getting handfuls of wallpaper paste onto flat surfaces with the palm of his hands, and then sticking the posters up like that. That was a bit exciting.
Yeah, because you weren't allowed to do that, were you? And
No,
everybody used to
no.
do that. Once it got dark, everybody used to go out and promote all their bands and their.
That's right. It was kind of very Halloweeny because it was after dark and sort of like looking
You'd
out
put a
for
big
people.
coat on and
That's
go out
right.
and with your wallpaper paste.
Yeah, but I do think we should have had a brush. I mean, that's too low tech, isn't it?
Yeah, that's just not well prepared.
People still wanted to go to clubs because all the pubs shut at 11. Bars opening all night wasn't a thing. So if you wanted to drink in town after 11, you had to go to a nightclub. So that was also a very different thing. And nightclubs had to shut at 2. And so if nightclubs had to shut at 2...
You had this little window, didn't you?
Had a window of 3 hours. Yeah, 3 hours where everything had to happen.
I think that's why clubs were open nearly every night of the week and people would go out 3-4 nights a week.
Yeah.
Compared to now.
Yeah, because you had 3 hours where everything had to happen. Everything you wanted to happen had to happen. You had to hear, if you wanted to get drunk, you had to get drunk. If you wanted to indulge in drugs or whatever, you did that. If you wanted to meet someone, you had to do that. If you wanted to impress someone, you had to do that. You had to do the whole thing in 3 hours. And if you just wanted to go and experience amazing music, you had to experience it all in 3 hours. So it was a very intense kind of 3 hour period where people wanted value for money, and they were paying at that point for the Fridays and Saturdays usually 12 quid to get in. It was all great for 91, probably 92, even 92. By 92 I'd had 2 top 10 hits. I toured in America, been on TV quite a lot, been on Top of the Pops probably 6 times by then, and I was still down that club 4 nights a week if I could be. Wow. Because I loved that club and I loved what it was doing, and I loved being part of it and feeling like it wasn't subversive, but it wasn't establishment either. It felt like you were creating a new normal, and it felt like, that's way overstating it. It makes it, I'm not trying to say I was part of something, but it felt like it was creating a place where it was normal to not have to worry too much about what you look like, other than to be part of something. I
feel we were so lucky, and I felt we were lucky at the time. It's not like I look back and think I was lucky. Every week I was thinking, oh, this is a lucky place to be. Even on the weeks where you only have like 10 people in and there isn't anything much to eat that week, you know, it still seemed like, wow, what a thing to be doing. The smell of records after they've been covered in dry ice and fag smoke and all that. And clubs smell awful without it. I mean, they smelt awful with it, but they smelt a different sort of awful.
That mix of kind of ash and beer.
Yeah.
We used to call it disco dirt because it was just like, it was on the floor and it was this like gluky kind of like beer and ash, and it would go all on the bottom of whatever your skirt or your trousers or anything. You wouldn't wear anything long if you could help it, because it would you get this layer and you could never get it off. However much you tried, you couldn't get it off. We used to call it disco dirt. Yeah.
So I miss that because that's not around anymore, and I just think, what's going on? It's not, you know.
Do you think that, like that kind of atmosphere, you know, I suppose the smell of a club was so strong, wasn't it?
Yeah, the smell of a club. I mean, it's also difficult for me to unpick what's the difference between, you know, looking back at that particular place and that particular time and just the thing of being in your 20s, you know, which is kind of it was a really good thing. I'm not sure it's such a great thing now. Hopefully people enjoy it.
So this function room, it started getting more and more popular to the point where we were full in the function room, so we had to start taking over Ricky's as well, which bit of politics in there because the resident DJ had been there for a while, and so we had to kind of then take over that room as well. So then we were running 2 rooms. So the second year we had 2 rooms, so we were up to about maybe 250 people, and then a guy arrived from Wakefield Rooftops, who was a DJ at Wakefield Rooftops, who was a friend with Michael Craig, who owned Michael Craig's, Mr. Craig's, and he turned up and bought the whole venue from the restaurant, and he had a vision to turn it into an upmarket wine bar.
Which was a thing at the time, wasn't it, in the 80s?
Yeah.
It moved from the pubs to this upmarket wine bar, I think, to attract more women as well.
That's it, yeah, it did, and more money as well. Yeah. It was supposed to be sort of a sophisticated place, and it would have a little bit of music, but nothing too contentious. So he set up this wine bar, and it was different licensing law, so it had to shut at 11, and we carried on with the club and kind of started it around 11. So we started pulling this audience from the wine bar, which was kind of at odds a little bit with our audience. So what we did was we moved to a Thursday, and then we applied for a license. We started working quite closely with Paul, and he became a good friend of mine, and we started we got a late license for the wine bar, and the nightlife club became even bigger. And it was then and he opened it all out so we could fill basically 2 venues then, Ricky's and the wine bar, and it was opened up to the function room as well, because that's what they kind of took
Was
out.
it 3 floors?
No, they took 2 floors. It was 2 floors with a function room above it, and they took the middle floor out and made a gallery, basically, if that makes sense.
So they renamed it the gallery.
They renamed it the gallery, yeah. And and then that just so happened that it the Thursday night was doing well. It was full. We had queues round to Mr. Craig's with students. We built it up, and we were now hitting sort of 800-900 people every Thursday during term time, and we started having conversations about promoting other nights. So we then took over. We started overseeing the Tuesday night, which was an indie night, and the Friday night, which was a rave night called Bliss. And that's when I'd met Tim from Utah Saints, and we brought him in to DJ the Friday night, and we could never get Monday night going. And the funny story about Monday night as a night round there was that we tried lots of things, including collaborations with Paul Fryer actually, about trying to do an electronic night. We tried to give away holidays, we tried to do free food, free entry for everything, and eventually we hit on an idea of 10p a pint.
I remember it.
And we thought nobody's going to pay, at the time, ridiculous, nobody's going to pay £4.50 to come in for 10p a pint. And it was just, and I said, let's call it Armageddon, because that's what it's going to be. And we call it Armageddon, and it was Armageddon. It just got rammed.
And I remember that at that time all the bars had glass. They didn't have plastic glasses.
Yeah.
It was all proper glass drinks, and the if I remember right, the 10p a pint night had plastic kind of beaker cups, which is standard now, because it was so cheap. Maybe they couldn't do the glass collector, because you had about 8 glass collectors on a night then, didn't you? With a dishwasher and everything. And the floor would be full of beer because everybody was spilling it because
no one cared
so much. And it was like, did you well into boots to go?
You did. At the end of the night, it was just like a sea of beer. Because people for 10p a pint would just find it funny to buy a pint and drop it. Yeah, so the Utah Saints were completely born out of rave, because going into it, I was into metal and industrial electronic music from Belgium, like a lot of us were at that time, and then I had my disco stuff. So I understood the dance world and I understood the dynamics of that, but electronic music for me was very much not so much disco, apart from I Feel Love, but electronic music for me was more rock music. And then I met Tim, who was doing hip hop and house music, and I went to my first, as it started taking shape, really started taking shape, I was thinking, this is so exciting, because the dynamics are the same as every other exciting type of music, but it's made with machines by people at home. So it had a direct artist-consumer relationship, which I've never thought about before. But it had that direct thing, which it didn't go through too many other channels. Whereas a lot of other music at the time would start off with a team of songwriters, and then it involved a demo artist, and then the artist would do it, and then they bring in a string section and a producer and go into a big studio and mess with it a lot. This music was coming direct from someone's bedroom straight into a club.
Yeah,
and
that's straight onto the dance floor as well.
And so was a lot of the fashion.
To that, wasn't there? Like, as in, you could see how people responded genuinely without a lot of kind of maybe manipulation, like marketing manipulation.
No, you're right. We got, as Utah Saints, we could see what worked. So I can remember playing What Can You Do For Me, which was our first single, in the club, and you got an instant reaction. And if it was going to be crap, then nobody was going to dance. But if it got a big
That's
reaction,
what I always
then
loved
you know.
about clubs, is that you get this direct response to
Yeah.
music, fashion, people, friendships, anything. People are just you just know what people are thinking. Nothing's kind of contrived.
No.
Everyone tells you the truth, don't they? Like if they love it or hate it. People seem to be very kind of openly get direct kind of feedback.
Yeah, but really nice feedback, even if it's constructive and people are telling you that they really don't like it. It was still, the whole mood was quite up against the backdrop of economic depression, basically. You know, the economy was not good.
That recession in the late 90s, I mean, Leeds was pretty much half boarded up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hardly anywhere to go out.
No, so but even in the early 90s, we had the property crash. There was all sorts of economic factors, but people just still went, no, we're not having that. We're going to go out and we're going to have a good time. And it wasn't pure hedonism, but there was definitely some escapism there.
Before the full explosion of the 90s rave scene, Mr. Craig's had opened on New Briggate in the 1980s. It was one of the most famous clubs of its day, a true glitzy disco set up to bring a new kind of mainstream glamour and sophistication to Leeds. And I spoke with Amanda Hammond, who was one of the resident DJs there. It was pretty unusual to ever see a female DJ back in the 1980s, and I spoke to Amanda about how she got started. In 1992, she was the first person we asked to come on board when we opened the Kit Kat Club, and stayed as one of our residents for over 20 years throughout Vague and SpeedQueen.
Yeah, I was one of the resident DJs at Mr. Craig's, 1985 onwards. I think I played there probably about 3 nights. The main night was the Tuesday evening, which was a predominantly gay themed night called Erotica. It was very popular.
So how did you end up DJing there?
Well, that's a strange question. Where do I begin? So obviously I knew nothing about DJing, but obviously very keen to learn. And I suppose them days, you could either buy a book. Well, did things exist online? I don't think they did. So you went to W.H. Smith. So I remember going to the bookstores to find a book, How to DJ, and I couldn't find one. So I kind of got it into my head, maybe I should stand at the side of the DJ and watch his techniques. Like some, strange person stood there for hours on end. And that's actually how I learnt to DJ. So I'd just stand there, try not to be a nuisance. And then obviously the DJs would look at me and think, what's she doing again? Her, stood there. So I tried to get a rapport going with them, but then obviously sometimes they're so busy they're not interested in talking to you. Anyway, week after week, month after month, it kind of all sank in. I thought, I think I can do this job now. I kind of had a small amount of knowledge of music, but that wasn't difficult.
And did you have a big record collection?
Well, I'd started my record collection then, collecting records, vinyl. Obviously, it was only vinyl those days. Spend hours, HMV. Can you remember that shop?
Yeah.
Spend hours at HMV, Crash Records in Leeds. Yeah. So I would, obviously sometimes you can get second-hand vinyl from flea markets and car boot sales and things. So anyway, I just kept collecting vinyl, and then that's how it all proceeded. And then I think after about 6 months of standing at side of the DJ at Mr. Craig's, got this rapport going with the resident DJ, Malcolm Dale, and he wasn't the easiest person. And then I said, I'd like to learn to DJ. And he went, that's what they all say. I said, no, I really want to learn. I said, can I work for you for free? Why don't you let me be a warm-up DJ for free? And he went, well, whatever. So he says, get in here then. I could do with a toilet break. So I remember obviously being in there in this amazing DJ booth. It was very big, and them days it was all glitter balls, fantastic light shows. Oh, amazing. Yeah, it was all glitz and glamour them days, and the music was unbelievable. Anyway, that's how I started to DJ, learnt, and I've offered my services for free. And that's how it all began.
So what kind of people used to go to Mr. Craig's?
Just your average. Well, obviously that club was aimed at being more sophisticated. Attempt to bring some London sophistication there. It was quite upmarket.
Yeah.
Everything was plush. There was a big VIP lounge. So from where you were in the DJ box, on to the left was a glass-fronted VIP lounge. So all the obviously important people.
And who was allowed in there?
Well, was there not? You could get in for free, but I think you had to spend a certain amount of money. So it was all expensive, more expensive, the drinks up there, and there was food as well, but it was overpriced. So your average person who wanted a good night out would be in the, you know, the main part of the club, and then people with money, more, you know, and business people would be in the VIP lounge, because I do believe the drinks were much more expensive. But there was no. But then also there was a membership fee for the VIP lounge. I think you had to join, actually, thinking about it. Yeah, as a member, because a lot of clubs them days had VIP lounges.
Yeah.
They did, didn't they?
Yeah, definitely.
And I always aspired. I used to think, oh, who's in the VIP lounge? And anyway, it was always full every evening, and that was really plush in there.
So, did you work on the Saturday night and the Tuesday night as well?
Tuesday,
and the mainstream
Thursday, and Saturday evening. But I was always the one DJ for Malcolm. Obviously, he was the main DJ, and then they would get guest DJs in. So, but then obviously, when I learnt the skill, then I got a fee. I got paid for just being there, because it's a long time from. Did it open at 9 till 2? Then they have to have a break, so they'd just go missing for an hour or whatever. Yeah. So it's great times, fabulous club, very exciting, always full no matter what even night of the week it was. No, never struggle for customers.
And it was open like every night?
5 nights a week. Yeah.
So tell me about like your typical kind of routine, getting ready, like, you know.
What, from home?
Yeah, like getting there and getting all your records there and like.
Oh, so on the day of working, obviously I worked through the day as well. Forgot what jobs I've had that many jobs. And then a certain amount of excitement going, but then obviously nervous as well. So them days I had bought the decks, the mixer and everything. So I used to practice for hours on end at my house. Then it was tapes them days, you know, the small cassettes. So I used to record my sets at home, stand there for hours on end, record the tape, then on the way to the club, obviously with the big metal boxes or the big black boxes full of vinyl that weighed an absolute ton. And on the way to the club, I would listen to the tape in the car and kind of work out in my head what I was, you know, going to play when I got there. So I always kind of recorded everything at home, and then very critical of if you made a mistake or, oh no, that wasn't good enough, that mix, or I should have done this or I should have done that. But that's how you learn.
So did you carry 2 boxes of
records? Oh, don't even ask. I don't know how I was. So I'd set off from, I lived in Wakefield. So say I started work at 9, set off at 8 at the latest, try and find somewhere to park. Them days, there weren't many double yellow lines in Leeds. There were no one-way systems. It was quite easy to park. You could park anywhere, really. Didn't really have to go in a car park and pay like now. And then I think, oh, right, so it would never fazed me. So I'd go alone from the house. I've always lived alone. Set off, go to the club. 2 boxes of records. How the hell I carried them is beyond me in all weathers. They're heavy out there, them record boxes.
It used to be a job for people, didn't it, actually being a record carrier? How to get into a club for free.
They used to snatch
the DJ's records.
They snatch the box off you to get in. And I used to think, what was that? How can I carry a box, Amanda, so I can get in? I went, yeah, I'll carry it for me. Can you put it in DJ box for me, please?
It
was quite funny, actually. Yeah, and they just snatched the box off you to get in. Yeah, so obviously, clearly much fitter them days and strong. So then you get in your club, then you put your box on the side, you know, get all your records in an order kind of thing, and then there you go.
Because one of the big things about DJing was that getting all the records out, putting them all back in the right sleeves, wasn't it?
Yeah, which sometimes doesn't happen. You know, it depends what mindset you're in. Yeah. I know, it's, honestly.
What did you used to wear?
Wear?
Yeah.
Well, I think I was them days I was a bit of a punk rocker as well, so kind of leather trousers. Oh no, basques.
Yes.
Do you remember? Yeah, so you put an image on, don't you? You wouldn't really wear these clothes. It'd be tight leather trousers. Seemed to have a lot of chains hanging around for some unknown reason. Chains. I was big on chains and studs. Yeah. and I had rather large boobs them days, so I kind of thought, right, if I make a mistake in that DJ box, it doesn't matter because they're looking at my boobs. Because obviously I had the, enhanced, procedure. So it was all kind of part of that. That's why I did that, really, that procedure for an image.
Did you feel that you had to create?
I had to create an image because
yourself?
Obviously I'm not the most outgoing person, really. But when you get to work, you have to be a different person. And sometimes you can struggle with that, depending what mood you're in or, how you're feeling on that day. And being confident as well. And as a person, I don't really like attention. I'm actually quite shy. So I thought, how can I, and a bit of a loner as well, I thought, how can I deal with all this attention? I really don't know. And I don't drink alcohol, so I did struggle with that at times. But then you walk in the club and then you hear the music and then the excitement from the whole concept of it, you just turn into a different person, but you're not really that person when you walk out. So I suppose it's like any kind of entertainer, isn't it?
I mean, I have to kind of flag up here that being a female DJ was a bit of an anomaly at that time, certainly in Leeds. I don't think there were hardly any, if any, that I can actually remember. I remember when I first saw you DJing being like really kind of...
Where did you see me?
Wow. Down at Rock Shots or somewhere
Shots,
down on Lower Briggate. Yeah,
that was a very busy club.
Yeah, and
is it in the lorry, the back of the lorry, the DJ booth part?
Yeah, I can't
remember.
I can't remember.
Back to Basics was upstairs.
I just remember that you were like a female DJ, and it was a bit like, because just women didn't work in clubs back then. Really, apart from us, kind of
it was
hostessing or dolly birds, that kind of just.
It was difficult to get the work in a club. It was all predominantly male, so it was hard. It was a struggle. So
is that why you felt that you had to
to get the
image?
work? It'd be like, oh, can you send us a tape cassette, no CDs then. So I used to have to do a recording at home, send it in. Oh no, it's rubbish. Can you send another? So I used to think, oh well, I'll just keep pestering them, and I did.
Did you get a lot of rejections?
Not that many really. No. Few, not many, and then they'd just come back to me then at a later date. Mainly the work, how I got the work was, like you said, I'd be working somewhere and then somebody would say, would you come and work for me one night? And that's how I got work them days.
Yeah.
Really different.
Like word of mouth.
Yeah. It wasn't difficult either, I don't think, them days to get work. It's quite easy, really. I don't know. Anyway, so I had to invent this image.
Do you remember any of the kind of standout tracks of that time?
Them days, and I need to look on my list actually because there's that many songs in there because I can remember them all from your club. But them days, I'm just thinking now, hang on, Mr. Craig's, Finally CC Penniston, Kim Sings Too Blind to See It, Snap the Power, I Love You Baby, the original, Bobby Brown Too Can Play That Game, those kind of tracks, and they weren't particularly fast, but the night always started off at a steady pace. You want banging, dance music to start with. It was always kind of steady way. So I always recall those amazing tracks, Crystal Waters, la da 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 dee dee dee, things like that. Those.
Oh, I love that track.
Yeah.
I heard it on the radio actually about 2 days ago.
Yeah. Mariah Carey, Dream Lover. So that kind of beat, they all were the same kind of beats per minute, those. So that you'd always start off the night with those kind of more slower dance tracks. Then obviously as the night progressed from maybe 11, 12 onwards, you'd get, more heavier music and, with the riffs and, more exciting tracks. But it was always those tracks that stuck in my mind. Alison Limerick and, Where Love Lives and all those iconic tracks. And women's tracks, those, really. Women just always ask for those, always. Just those kind of tracks, really, that stuck in my mind.
Did you find a big difference then between the tracks that men and women had asked for?
Yeah, the women love more vocal and the men it'd be like, oh, have you got a Josh Wink, High State of Consciousness? I went, yeah, and I thought, I can't play it at 9:30. It's a time and a place.
Did you find that everybody stayed? Because obviously the licensing laws were very strict in the 1980s. And
oh, you were out of that. You were out of that.
PM.
You were out of that club at 2:10. I can assure you.
And the music just went off.
Dead at 2 o'clock.
Cut the music, and the doorman.
But of course, I used to not obey rules because I've never been one for obeying rules, and I'd keep going and get shouted at. I think, I'm not turning it off at 2 o'clock. Come on, look at them all on the dance floor. And then security would say, Amanda, dead off.
It kind of made an intensity though, didn't it? Because everybody stayed right till the end.
Yeah, and then I used to write all the requests down, a list of requests, and then I think, I've not finished all my requests. And then they'd come up to you at 2:00 going, you haven't played my song? I went, I'm really sorry, but the club is closed now. I will play it for you the next time I see you, I promise you. Yeah, you better do. That kind of thing, do you know what I mean?
Of course, if you're going to go out at night, you need fabulous clothes to wear. And in the 90s, Mark Wilkes was the go-to fashion designer if you wanted custom-made club and party wear. He had a shop and a label called Tortoise on New Briggate, below Record Box, which was an independent vinyl shop. His clothes were a celebration of creativity and individualism, always well made and beautifully fitted, often made from dead stock fabric from Leeds Market. He made everything from mini dresses made out of Tetley's tea towels for our drag queens to the most glamorous ball gowns for clubbing in, and even silk corsets for Victoria Beckham. This is a tiny snapshot of his experiences being an independent business on New Briggate.
Could you tell me a little bit about when you started Tortoise and about New Briggate really, and why you ended up there and how you ended up there?
Tortoise started, when I was living in Chapeltown, very early 90s, and I was just doing it as a little hobby. I was running Adrian's record shop, Record Box.
That was on New Briggate, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, initially we started just down by the Corn Exchange, and then we got chance of a shop up on New Briggate, which meant that I could have the basement floor and he had the top floor. So it just all went hand in hand, because I'd been making clothes for myself and my friends and clubbers for years, and it just worked. It was just like...
Do you remember the shop, what number it was? And
we were arguing about this the other night, and I think it was 38 New Briggate. It was one of the group of three, and it was right next door to Beano, the Whole Foods shop. Everything just took off from that point of moving up there. It was just mental. I don't know whether you can remember the little fish bowls, because at first I just had the downstairs floor.
The basement?
Yeah, the actual proper basement. So I needed a cutting room and everything, so I partitioned it all off and I put all fish tanks up in there. Right, where were I going? Where's my thread?
Describe the shop.
Classic art deco shop, really, that had fallen into rack and ruin. It was all owned by the council. We went in and we were just like, oh my God. But they did renovate it.
Before?
No.
It was just derelict.
Yeah. It's deviating on from this shop, but when Adrian moved further down the road, when he took Record Box and made it even bigger, he moved into the place that was the old, what's the polite way of saying it? An old knocking shop.
Which old
and they had all saunas and big baths and stuff upstairs.
Where's that?
Or was that the one next door?
Is that a New Briggate?
Yeah. It might have been above North Bar. But it must have been a big concern, because there were like these, great big hot tubs and all that sort of scenario going on. And then these really lewd paintings on the wall. Anyway, let's get back to 38 New Briggate. Yeah.
So that was when the record box expanded.
Yeah, I can't remember if we'd gone to see Above North Bar for renting it out, or if it was the shop he ended up in. I think it was maybe Above North Bar. They are always there. As soon as you scratch the surface, there's always a bit of sleaze, isn't there?
Yeah, well, New Briggate was quite run down, wasn't it?
Yeah. It really was. It was gateway in and out of Leeds as well, which was what we found with the shopping. I mean, all you clubbers, they found you wherever you were, because everybody wanted something different. But then my other customers with all the corsets and stuff, they found me because it was either they'd come in through that way or exit the city through that way. So it was such a great street for that.
Yeah, and all the bus stops were there, weren't
exactly,
they? So,
yeah.
Everybody was always kind of there waiting for the buses to go out of town.
No, great little streets, yeah.
So, do you remember how much your rent was?
I think Adrian signed the lease, and I think it was 8,500 for the whole building.
For a year?
For a year, which is just unthinkable now, isn't it? But I mean, we thought it was really expensive. This is so expensive. This is such a risk.
Tell us a little bit about your customers, because you were part of this time in Leeds where there was a lot of independent fashion designers. There was lots and lots of independent fashion boutiques. It was, the club scene was kind of really erupting in Leeds, and everybody wanted a new outfit for every Saturday night. They wanted a different outfit.
Yeah.
And that really doesn't exist anymore, does it? Like so many kind of really eclectic different places to kind of find your style. So
no, I had predominantly 3 different customer bases that I operated and juggled and did around that shop. I had my my well-off Jewish ladies, all your North Leeds ladies and their daughters. Then I had all the travellers, because they all needed a new outfit for our Mary's wedding and everything. And then I also had my clubbers. So it was just absolutely manic managing it. And then obviously I had my wholesale business, because at that point the Posh Spice story had hit. So I was getting all enquiries about wholesale, and so yeah, it was just mental.
So tell us about how you ended up making corsets for Victoria Beckham from your unit in Leeds off New Briggate.
It was just all an accident. We got this customer, really lovely lady, Brenda at Tarts in Hertfordshire, and she phoned us up and she went, "We've had somebody very special come in. Could you do us your corset?" We did a size 1 and it was an 8. She went, "I need one smaller. It's tiny." So yeah, we did one. She loved it.
Did you know who you're making it for?
We sort of had an indication, and then she said, "Oh, she loved that one. Can she have that one in this one? Can she have it in that one?"
What colour was it? What was it like?
Oh, we did loads actually for her, because we did her mum, her sister, and then off the back of that, loads of other different celebrities as well. I mean, I want your Times supplement fashion thing. There were people wearing my corsets, and it was just all absolutely crazy. So just a manic time, but so much fun. It was just wonderful.
I think like you used to be able to go into your shop and you could literally go in there and you would measure everybody, wouldn't you? And make clothes to order, so that any creation, as I remember, any fantasy that you had, you could say, "Can you make me this? Can you turn me into this?" I remember once wanting to be a spin cycle in a washing machine outfit, and you just interpreted that and made it, and everything was made to measure as well.
Yeah, you can't do anything without measuring, and I think for years I just wanted to do it. I knew I had this creative side in me, and then all of a sudden everybody's wanting it, and it was just like, yeah, go on, we'll do it. I mean, I remember it just, Fridays and Saturdays. Fridays was collection usually for any sort of your posh do's and your weddings and your balls and things like that. And then Saturdays were your manic day, where you're literally finishing off outfits for the club. It's like, I've got to make 3 cowboy hats, paint one of them pink, put flowers on the other one, and I'd make them all from scratch out of this mad stuff we got off the market. I remember making all the cyber stuff. Can you remember when all the cyber sort of punk stuff were in?
Yeah.
So you could use like your leatherettes and kite fabrics, and they were really into that. That were amazing.
I mean, in a lot of ways, you were kind of a sustainable brand before it was a thing.
Oh
weren't
God,
you?
yeah.
It
was just out of necessity, really. I mean, for the corsets and the ball gowns and stuff, money were no object, because that's what they wanted. They wanted the upper end. But when you're making, you'd still put loads of time into a club outfit, but all your clubbers, they ain't got much money. And it literally, they were wearing it that week, and then maybe it'd go in wardrobe for 2 months and they'd wear it again. Yeah, I had just so many regulars who wanted a little outfit every week, so you've got to try and keep it affordable, I guess. I didn't think about the recycling, but I've always liked that, grabbing a roll end of something and making something quite amazing out of it.
And did you study fashion, or did you just love it? Just have a natural...
My mum had never let me on a sewing machine. My mum can do everything. Well, she used to be able to, God rest her soul. But she could literally do everything. She was a farmer's daughter, and she could do everything. She'd make her own dresses when she used to go out in the 60s. And I always knew I wanted to try, and she'd just be like, I'm left-handed. And she couldn't cope. She'd just be looking at me going, no, you're doing it wrong. No, I can't look at you. No, I can't do it. Don't you go on that sewing machine. But I used to, when she used to go out, I'd have a little play around. and just make odd, bizarre little things, and then have to throw them away, because if she caught me, that'd be it. I'd get a right clatter in. I started just tinkering about with stuff. I were on Dole. I was living in a caravan, and I bought a sewing machine for £10, and I bought an old blanket for, I think, maybe £2.50, and a lump of velvet, all from charity shop. And I had this fabulous friend called Joanne. She's just stunning. And I went, oh, I'm going to make you a coat. So this, you know, when blankets were blankets, proper beautiful, just off-white oatmeal, and then this brown velvet. And I made this most fabulous coat with this great big collar. Really basic when I look back at it. It was literally like a T-shape, and I'd put some cuffs and this collar on. She just loved it. She wore it and she went, oh my God. And she gave me 50 quid. I thought, God, there's money in this. Let's have a go. Let's see what else we can do. And that's where it started, really.
I mean, I remember you used to make like nearly all the girls' dresses in the club at one point, and the drag queens, you were dressing the drag queens. I remember once...
Clanger, sorry. Mr.
Yeah.
Andrew Clancy.
Yes, who ran our door for us.
I mean, he had some of the bizarre... He was such game for a laugh. I had him in a bloody gold metallic spandex G-string with tulle cowboy chaps and a little waistcoat that fastened with like little diamante things, and I made him a matching cowboy hat. He loved it. And now he's in fashion.
Yeah.
There's so many of them who are in
Nashville,
fashion.
Texas,
I know.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy.
I think he's dressing Beyonce and the likes now. So all from your little creations on New Briggate.
And Lucy, she's fashion, isn't she?
Yeah.
Lucy's
so can you
gone to
describe like
fashion.
a typical kind of Saturday in the shop? What it was like?
But it was quite manic, and I needed to, But it was coffee, fueled on coffee. And by this point, it wasn't just me. When I'd moved to New Briggate, I managed to get Fran on board. She came to me as not a YTS. What were them things when they were trying to help people who'd been on dole for a while? She'd studied fashion, and she'd been on dole for ages because there's just not openings, is there, into proper fashion. So she were on board. I think when we were as high, I think there were maybe 4 or 5 of us working out the... Because from this stage, we'd progressed to having the kitchen as our sewing room, which was also the shared kitchen for record box. So they'd all be coming down, making the brews. We'd all be sat at the sewing machines. And by this stage, I think we'd only got one industrial sewing machine. But I think we were supplying maybe 6 wholesale people by that point, which then grew to 57 by the time I passed Tortoise on and sold it. But so if you can imagine, there must be a room, a third of the set, 10 foot by 12 foot, with 4, 5, 6 sewing machines in one industrial machine, and it were also a staff room for going and helping, for people going and making the cup of tea who worked in the record shop. So it was mental. So yeah, it would be literally just sewing, smoking, drinking coffee, sewing. Back door would be open because there'd be somebody spraying flowers because they needed to go on this outfit and they needed to dry. Everything was just by the skin of your teeth.
And did you ever advertise, or was everything word of mouth?
Never advertised.
Just all people just finding out about
you.
And...
I did a couple of little interviews for Arts Transpennine and what was that little magazine in Leeds that we had? Little Half magazine.
There used to be the Leeds Weekly. I
can't remember the name of it. Yeah, but no, I've never done any advertising, just word of mouth and then...
And I bet none of it's recorded either, is it? It's not
no, because I'm totally slack at that type of thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely slack of it. Because I was literally just... I mean, we were that chaotic, because the Posh Spice thing had erupted, then the club went through stratosphere at that point as well, didn't it?
Yeah.
So everything just kept building, and we just rode the wave. It was just fantastic.
What did you love the most about it?
The buzz of it, the buzz and the diversity of it, and just the time. It was a special time that we won't get back. And I know loads of people say that, but we won't. It was like the club represented. So I had a taste of what the club represented because I'd been used to flesh and in Manchester. So I'd already got there with the outlandish and you can wear what you want and stuff. But it was a really new thing for Leeds, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think SpeedQueen was it was known, wasn't it, to be a place where you could just really just push the boat out.
Yeah.
And you could wear anything.
Yeah.
And experiment in any way at all you wanted, like visually, no holds barred.
Yeah.
And they did.
They did. They did. It was funny, wasn't it? Leeds took a while to catch up with that. I suppose, yeah, it sort of dragged its heels for a long time. It was still all in the Mr. Craig's and the confettis type. Oh, you've got to wear shoes and... Trust me, rubbish.
Yeah, dress up nice.
Yeah, oh, you've got to dress up nice.
So, I remember a night where we had a fashion show with all our drag artists, and you got some sponsorship from Tetley's Tea.
Oh, I did, yeah.
Yeah, and you had this big box of Tetley's tea towel. And you made all these like amazing little mini dresses for them to go down the catwalk. Do you remember that?
I do. I've still got the photos of that.
Oh,
yeah.
right, okay.
No. That would go.
Tell us how that came about, a collaboration with Tetley's Tea and
I've no
SpeedQueen.
idea. It was because you decided
Oh,
you were calling it
Storm in a Teacup.
Storm in
I
a
was doing
Teacup.
party.
So I went, right, we'll just get on phone to Tetley's Tea then.
Yeah, because I asked you to make costumes around that theme.
Because Liz Dawn that night.
No, that was another night.
Oh, was that another night?
Yeah.
Yeah, those drag queens, they were funny.
So you just rang Tetley's Tea?
I can't remember how it came about. I must have done, because I'd done one years before for Mesmac, and I'd just rung them and I'd rung, was it Mates? I think it was Mates, or can you remember Mates Condoms? And I'd just rung them and said, I'm doing this fashion show, it's promoting safe sex, what have you got, what can you send me? I've got the photos of this. So I literally made a Centurion outfit out of all the they sent me the flat pack cardboard boxes. So I literally stapled them all together. Did a great big crinoline. I did a Centurion. I did Calais dress that was covered, like a tassel dress. Well, I took all the, those silly plastic things that you can put price labels on with. So I put all the condom wrappers onto a dress and made like a long shimmering dress, but all with condoms.
Right, I see. Those little Kimballs.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Kimballs, yeah. Yeah, and then a feather boa out of blown up condoms, and yeah, so the Tetley thing came off the back of that. I was just like, I did Fran. But I can't remember. Everything was so hectic. If you ask me a time and a date and a place, I'm absolutely no idea. I couldn't tell you.
I think the drag queens dressed in Tetley's tea towels, and you actually being able to make them look so glamorous.
But they styled them out, didn't they? There were nothing to them. They were just like based on a little shift dress, and I put bob some tulle sleeves on, or a bit of can round here, or
and a little teacup on the head.
Well, they were fabulous. I wonder where they are now.
So, did you see kind of the fashion kind of change over the years, like that you were working there? With the kind of like obviously like the club scene like becoming so kind of strong in Leeds?
I don't know really, because I think we were just all in our own little bubble. I mean, obviously there was a change. It was more into the music, what your customers were into, because it wasn't just for SpeedQueen who were doing outfits. There were people who were going off to Cyberdog events and stuff like that. And I just think that clubbing had its own little bubble. You were aware of what were going on in fashion, but for the club side of it, it was just pretty much anything, and
it was a wonderful little identities, didn't they?
And it was just a great little melting pot, and it was quite nice when those diverged as well. When you'd get, some people, oh, we tried SpeedQueen, oh, isn't it great? Or, oh, we tried Thingy, oh, it's great. No, so I don't think it really changed. It just. People just got a little bit more outlandish and a bit freer. Definitely a bit freer.
So New Briggate, like, I presume you used to work late and stuff like that. And what was it like on New Briggate at night?
Oh, it was lovely. It had a real buzz about it, because it's a wide enough street, and there were just all your characters, weren't there? I mean, Barry's over the road. I mean, I'd be pain to go there, but if we were working late on a thing and you needed a bit of sustenance...
It was very expensive.
But it was amazing, because I remember meeting, what's the big tall fella? theatre fella. But no, it was it's because it was a way in and out of Leeds, so it just had that sort of little city buzz about it, a little bit seedy, but all the lights on and everything. It was just, it was nice. It was a nice place. It had something about it, didn't it?
We're now going to go back to the 1970s to find out more about what the nightlife scene in the new Briggate area had to offer. Val Rose worked as the head waitress at the prolific nightclub Cinderella Rockefellers, set up by Peter Stringfellow, which was based on Merrion Way just round the corner from New Briggate. Val later became the owner of Mint Club on Harrison Street, which she ran for over 20 years until 2019. She has worked in nightclubs in the area for over 40 years, and it was both fascinating and enlightening talking to her, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if we saw her setting up a new club in the future.
Well, at that particular time, it was the club to try and get into. It was very upmarket compared to what the north of England had before. Peter brought some very good ideas.
So Peter Stringfellow
It did.
set it up? Yeah.
Well, everybody always remembers Peter as setting it up, but his brother Jeff was the business side of it. Peter was the entertainer, so it was a combination of both. Jeff was a bit of the brains behind it all.
And did it open in 1970?
Yeah, 1970. I started there in 71. So it'd been open, I think it'd been open something like 9 months, 10 months when I started there.
And what did you do?
Waitress. I went for, I didn't want to work during the day. Obviously everyone needs a job and needs money. So I decided I'd work through the night instead. And then I've got the days, and I've always been a night worker, anyway. It's something I've always wanted to do, work nights, never days.
Yeah.
You miss too much if you work days. So I went as waitress.
So when you say a waitress, I think the idea now of having a waitress in a nightclub seems quite hard to kind of envisage. So
yeah, because they don't have them anymore. But you couldn't get served at the bar. There was no bar service. In either Cinderella's or Rockefellers, it was all waitress service only. So there was quite a few of us. I think there was about 12 of us.
And tables?
All tables, yeah. Everybody. You could stand, it was very crowded and you'd still get served, but you just couldn't approach the bar. You had to get a waitress to get your drinks. And if you weren't nice to the waitresses and tipped them, which that's what everybody lived on then, you didn't get served, or they were very reluctant to serve you quickly.
Oh, so people had to behave nicely then.
You had to tip the waitresses or you probably wouldn't get served, or if you got served and you didn't tip, they wouldn't come back to you. We had sort of areas in those days. You had designated areas to serve in, you went sort of in about a 12-foot sort of radius, but it was packed, so you were busy all night. And we worked on very little money. It was something like, I think we got paid something like £5 a night or something, but you made quite a lot of money in tips then. You see, you don't make that much money anymore in tips, but you did then in those days.
Yeah, well, there's no cash, is there?
No, it was a good job to be in if you wanted to make money short term. If you wanted to just do it for a couple of years.
And how many nights did it open?
It opened 6 nights a week, and it was very busy.
Busy 6 nights a week?
It was, yeah. And don't forget, no student nights. There was no student nights then. It was just general public, and there was always queuing. Everybody queued to come in. I would say it wasn't a young crowd, really. It was sort of probably average age will have been about 24-ish, 25. It wasn't like a...
So many working people.
Yeah. It was a bit too posh, we'll say, for young kids to go in. I think it was a bit sort of... And you had to be dressed correctly, of course.
And what kind of things did people wear?
Well, you couldn't wear trainers for a start. I can't even remember if they existed then, to be honest, except for doing sporting.
No, I don't think they were a fashion thing.
No, they weren't. I think we just wore them when we went to the gym. You had to wear shoes, you had to wear proper trousers, no jeans. It wasn't casual, and you had to wear a tie. You had to have a tie on. Because we used to keep ties on reception, for people that had forgotten them, and we'd lend them out.
And what about the women?
Just dressed sort of elegant, really, or... In Cinderella's a bit more casual for women, but in Rockefellers you definitely had to be elegant.
So what was the difference between Cinderella's and Rockefeller's? Were two different clubs together? Or
Yeah, two different entrances, so you had to be over 21 to go in Rockefeller's.
So it was more at market?
Yeah. It was a big glass door that separated the two, that we could pass freely between, but customers couldn't. You had to come in the correct entrances to go in the club. Now, if you were in Rockefeller's, you could come through into Cinderella's, but if you were in Cinderella's, you couldn't go through into Rockefeller's. Yeah. So the guys used to go through into Cinderella's for all the young girls and bring them back into Rockefeller's, which was a big thing.
So who was in Rockefeller's then? What kind of people?
An older crowd. A lot of Peter was always a magnet for sort of getting rich and famous people into his clubs. Always. I don't know how he did it. But
so was Peter Stringford, was this his first club then before he went to
No, he had other clubs. I think he came from Mojo in Sheffield to get this. I think that was his last club. He had the Black Cat in Sheffield. He had a church hall. You know, he started young and sort of played good music. But he still got really big name people then in his little... He just had the knack, you know, of getting them. So we had loads of people in Rockefeller's. Mike and Bernie Winters, that sort of thing, you know, it was like a cabaret club. Whereas in Cinderella's, it was just all about the dancing. But both clubs had restaurants.
Really?
Which you don't get that now.
No. And what kind of food did they serve?
In Cinderella's, it was sort of casual, like maybe burgers, chips, you know, that sort of thing, a bit sort of casual food. But in Rockefeller's, it was a proper a la carte menu. It was all, and we even had a fish tank that you could pick your own fish out of.
That's
fabulous. So customers would go pick the fish, and then our head waiter would get the fish if he could.
So what kind of outfits did you wear then?
In Cinderella's, I ended up being...
Did you have a uniform?
Yeah, no, not as such. I was the head waitress after I'd worked there about 2 months. So I did sort of all the rotas and employed the girls and all that sort of thing. And we used to change we'd change our outfits quite frequently. And it was more...
throughout the night?
No, throughout the weeks. You know, we'd keep the same one for a couple of weeks, or we might change after a week, depending. So we wore quite risque outfits, to be honest, for those days. The one that I can remember most was I went to London to Carnaby Street to shop for my boots, because you know then there were boots with massive heels and soles, yeah, up to your knee, you know, zipped up the side. I actually went to buy mine in Carnaby Street in London. They were very spectacular, and we wore what was classed as hot pants then, which was the smallest shorts you could possibly wear. It was a competition really for who could wear the least clothes, to be honest, which was quite sort of gobsmacking for customers, because in the north of England, you see, that hadn't happened yet in nightclubs where you got scantily dressed waitresses. You know, it wasn't really a thing. And we had what was termed as go-go dancers on in Cinderella's, and they were next to nothing as well, and used to dance on stage. You had a stage. In both clubs had a stage. Completely different to what it's like now. And DJs. The DJs, I think we had Pete Tyler, Chris Crossley, a guy called Garth, and they were all super looking guys, you know, and all the girls used to sort of scream at them. And they talked a lot over the decks. Yeah. They chatted and, you know, talked to girls and shouted at girls, and
what kind of music?
All the usual sort of Saturday Night Fever type music, you know, anything really that was in the charts. You know, it wasn't a set sort of type of music, it was just everything then, and everybody danced, but not on their own. They didn't dance on their own, they got on the dance floor with someone else. You know,
At that time, did everybody kind of dance in couples?
More or less, yeah. You get the occasional two girls up to dance, or, you know, you would never get two guys up to dance. Guys did not dance on their own. Girls would occasionally dance on their own, but you'd never get a guy on the dance floor dancing on his own. You might get one sort of stood at the top of the stairs trying to be cool, you know, and wiggling a bit. But.
And last we will hear from Jojo, radio presenter, actor, singer and all-round fashionista. I met Jojo in 1992 when she walked into the Kit Kat Club one night and asked me for a job. She'd found out about the club when she was studying drama in London because a friend wrote her a letter telling her all about it, and we have been firm friends ever since.
It was just a Tuesday night initially, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a trial, a 6-week trial on Tuesday night.
I don't think I came to Tuesday nights because I was living in London at the time.
And it moved to Friday really quickly because it became so popular.
And that's when I got a letter from one of my best friends who literally used to write to me weekly because obviously I moved to London to become an actor and go to college, and she stayed in Leeds. And I do remember getting this letter from her and her telling me about this. Jojo, you've got to come back to Leeds. You've got to come back to Leeds and come to this club with me. Honestly, it's full of people like us. Because we kind of like had this best friend, and we kind of met in a second-hand clothes shop, and we immediately just fell in love with each other. And we just felt like we were the only people who kind of understood one another. So to be able to go into a space where you kind of felt, oh, there's a load of other people who are a bit kooky and a bit... I mean, we didn't think we were odd. We thought everybody else was odd, you know what I mean? But people used to look at us like we were odd because we kind of dressed quite outlandishly. We were quite leery as a pair of girls together. We did get thrown out of quite a few places for just behaving badly.
Being misunderstood.
Being misunderstood, we'd like to put it like that. But when I found Kit Kat Club, it was just, we just felt at home, you know. It was just full of really extraordinary, interesting people. People expressed themselves with their clothing just as we did. And you just felt like you could be yourself.
I mean, it was a very experimental art club, and we didn't actually play house music, which was quite mad.
I loved that though. I loved all the psychedelic 60s music, but I also loved the kind of vaudeville kind of cabaret area as well, because I remember, like, I'm sure you had a blind knife thrower on.
Yes, we did. We did. Yes.
I am not making that up, am I?
We had a lot of cabaret acts that were all, you know, it'd fallen out of fashion, and so there were a lot of older cabaret acts that weren't getting work, and they'd come to us, and they were so excited by this like young new audience.
Yeah.
We did.
I knew that it was a really unique place. And it was full of some, well, what I consider exceptional people, and some of those people became friends for life, including yourself, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like, oh gosh, I found my people, finally, because I felt like a bit of a freak before that.
I think that's why I started this as well, because I loved going out, but I never kind of found anywhere where I really felt catered for me. Or there was more art based as well, and more visual, and it was just, it was very exciting, wasn't it? Do you remember some of the outfits that you wore?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, obviously, as a young, I would have been like 19-year-old then. Didn't have a lot of money. I was a student, so I would often just kind of raid whatever charity shops. I went to a lot of car booths, so anything kind of like really bright and I mean, I remember actually the friend who introduced me to the club was my friend Heidi, and I think there's even a video exists of us both, and she had this blue dress which was like 60s kind of, is it Poochie the style?
Yeah, the paisley.
Yeah, Poochie. Yeah. And then I found something in pink, but it was long, so I shortened it, obviously. And we went out together, and we were like, just in like our little Poochie paisley outfits.
I think that night was
big heels.
Yeah, I think that night is when we actually shot the video for COD, for Purple Love Balloon.
That was it.
Yeah, that were a really, really successful band from Leeds.
Yeah.
Back then.
But yeah, back then, just whatever was like cheap. That's what I want. But I've made it look $1 million, you know, and that was, yeah. Like,
I mean, I remember you coming up. I remember you coming up to me at the bar and saying that you wanted a job.
Oh gosh! As soon as I went in there the first time, I was like, well, I'm working here. I didn't know who to approach. In fact, I think I approached a guy, and then you told me...
You approached Paul, who I was running the club with.
Yeah.
And I don't think you got any luck off him. And I said, you should ask me like this.
Yeah, because I run things, I'm the boss, kind of thing. So anyway, yeah, we never looked back. You know, you've given me a lot of work over the years, and it's all been very entertaining and fun. And and silly. I'm quite a silly person, so you know, I like to throw myself around a dance floor without people looking down the noses at me like, oh God, what she come as. Do you know, that's the kind of thing, like when you went out, if you were a little bit alternative, they'd look at you as if to say, well, you know, what have you come as? Or it's not, what are you doing?
You've got your grandma's curtains on, love.
Yeah.
That was a common one you shouted at in the street.
Like, the bigger the pattern, the brighter the colour. I'm wearing that. And do you know what I mean? Like, all the kids are excited because Harry Styles is wearing a feather boa. We everything had feathers. We used to attach our feathers to our nighties, you know, and to our bras. Yeah, no, it was a great place to kind of dress up and celebrate your own unique style and individuality.
And do you remember, like, because everything shuts at 2:00.
Yeah, that's so funny because things go on forever. They go on for too long now, I think.
Well, there is that intensity, isn't
Yeah.
there? You have that tiny amount of time.
Wait, we've got only half now. Quick,
3
do some
hours.
dancing. Yeah, it was intense, and then suddenly it's shut, and then what do you do next? I remember you'd kind of leave, and people would loiter around for a while because you know you'd be hoping that somebody would be throwing some kind of after party you could go to because you'd not finished.
Yeah,
but, and also praying that it's not going to be your house again. That kind of thing. But
navigating the hour-long taxi queue on the top of New Briggate.
Yes. I mean, I was quite fortunate. I did have to get the occasional taxi from queuing, but my father back in the day, he was a taxi driver and he would always pick me and my mates up, which is quite useful. Didn't charge either, but you know, that's what fathers should do.
I remember standing in the taxi rank and you could be there because there was just one and you could be there for, obviously there's no Uber.
No.
You could be there for over an hour in any weather, and what people would do is if there's only 1 or 2 people, they'd always shout down the queue to see if anyone was going.
Heading left!
Everyone was going to the same place, and you could share the taxi, so the taxi queue would go down quicker and you could split the money.
Yeah.
And that was a normal, all that interaction that happened in the queue.
Yeah.
And, you know, people would be chatting for an hour and stuff like that.
Yeah, you didn't
seeing every kind of different kind of people in different states.
Yeah, queues were actually kind of fun back in the day.
Queues were social spaces to make friends.
Yeah, definitely. I forgot about the taxi sharing, but taxis were well cheap back in the day.
Yeah.
I could get everywhere for about £3.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Now it's about 30 for me to get home from town, so I just think, oh God, I'll just stay at home.
Yeah, so I remember as well, you were we had a cigarette girl at the club, and which you did for a short while.
I did. Well, as soon as I saw the whole idea of a cigarette girl, it really appealed to me because there's something kind of straight out of the movies about it. So, you know, it's like
1950s.
Yeah, and she had there was a really nice velvet box, and it was really comfortable to wear as well.
Well, I'd made that.
Yeah, handmade velvet box, and it was great because it was like, you know, obviously cigarettes are not a thing anymore, but back then you could still smoke inside, and all the cigarettes that were on offer were just like the Sobranis, obviously the cocktail cigarettes with like the gold tips, but then there were kind of pastel colours like pinks and
the Vogues.
I loved the Vogue, and there was one I really liked, the Belindas. They looked like that Doris Day on the front of them, and there was a menthol one that she was fabulous. Honestly, I loved smoking back then. You can tell by my voice. Don't do it anymore. But and there was even cigarettes, those packet cigarettes called Death.
Yes.
Yeah, so there was a fine array of cigarettes.
I think they were kind of visually beautiful back then, but we used to buy them all from a tobacconist in the Merrion Centre. Used to have a market.
That's right.
And they used to have this tobacconist with every kind of cigarette from every country, and we used to buy them. And do you remember you could buy just one in the club, and we'd have little matchbooks.
You could buy a single.
And you'd light it for them.
Yeah.
So it was all points of contact and
it was just
communication.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that really appealed to me because I'm a natural chatterbox, you know, to the point where some people honestly don't like to talk, they don't want to make eye contact or anything. But if you've got like a role in a club, obviously, and you're selling things that people want, they automatically navigate towards you, and conversations can strike up.
It's very good for people that feel uncomfortable or socially shy. Props are brilliant for that and important.
Yeah. No, it's a great job.
So obviously we met in the clubs, all the clubs in those days used to run every single week, which is really unusual now.
I know, it was a ritual. You would make an appointment to go. I know I would.
Yeah, and they were affordable to be able to do that, and obviously there wasn't a lot going on, So what do you think the value is of having that kind of regular kind of nighttime space?
I think without it, I would have felt quite isolated as a person. As I say, it gave more than just a night out to me personally. It gave an opportunity for me to meet like-minded people who became friends fundamentally for life. It's kind of almost tribal.
Yeah, and I think because it was every week, the friendships could really grow naturally over time, couldn't they, share life experiences.
You saw people evolve, you saw people, you supported people through things, I guess, when people had a few drinks down them, they could speak more freely and open. They would tell you a lot of things about themselves, really open up, so you kind of felt invested in the people, and you kind of think, I wonder if that so-and-so will be there this week, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and they were.
No, and you didn't have a number for them, or couldn't have them up on Facebook and go, message them, say, are you coming again? That didn't exist. You just had to kind of go along and you'd see who you see. And so sometimes there was the old familiar faces. There was always, I think one of the greatest things about going there is I know that I could have gone on my own, and there would have been at least a handful of people I will have met before I felt safe and comfortable to do that. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have to go out with a gang of girls.
No.
But which I hate, actually. I'm kind of independent person when it comes to going out. I like to flit. Go where I want to go. No, are you ready? Come on, get your coat. I can't be arsed with all that. Do you know what I mean? If I'm ready to move on, I'm going. Do you know what I mean? So having a place to go where you could just go in, have a couple of hours and, duck in, have a bit of social, see some like-minded and familiar faces was amazing. Just, incredible, really. I just don't know how I could have got through life without it, really. Do you know what I mean?
Nightclubs have always been a hotbed of culture, and the new Briggate area of Leeds has had a diverse independent club scene that has been invaluable for music, fashion, identity, and creative and economic opportunities for over many decades. Clubs were very much a constant in people's lives back then, always there, open at least 5 nights a week, every week, until 2 a.m. in the morning. And this podcast is not a comprehensive history of New Briggate, as there were many more nightclubs and nightlife stories that have been unable to be included in this one episode. But by sitting down and talking to Lucy, Jez, Amanda, Mark, Val and Jojo, hopefully a tiny bit of the life on New Briggate has been captured and preserved from a time before mobile phones and social media, when very little was actually ever recorded or documented. And one thing's for sure, long after the buildings and businesses have moved on, the stories, experiences and connections made in those spaces are what still exist. And let's hope as New Briggate continues to evolve, there will always be space for new forms of nightlife and opportunities for people to come together for the love of music, fun and joy. Thanks for listening.
This podcast was written and researched by Suzy Mason, with contributions from Lucy Fishwick, Jez Willis, Amanda Hammond, Mark Wilkes, Val Rose, and Jojo Kelly. It was produced by East Street Art. Hidden Histories of New Briggate is supported by Leeds City Council and Historic England as part of the New Briggate High Street Heritage Action Zone Regeneration Programme. To find out more about the project, visit www.eaststreetarts.org.uk.